this last year, what's wrong with comics at the Town and Country, and we got a massive response. First, the auditorium was filled with people, and they had a lot of questions, and there was a lot of frustration. There were enough commentators up here and experts to answer most of it, but our problem was that we were cut short because we had so much. So we weren't able to sit down and theorize fixes. We only got as far as it's messed up, now what? So what I'm going to try to do is hold all of us accountable to keep our comments relatively short and get our points across. And as audience members, we're going to ask you guys to participate. You guys are part of this. But if you need to also keep your comments concise and short. If there's something that you have a great concern of, listen, maybe somebody else will bring it up and they'll answer the questions for you. So right now what I'll do is I'll introduce the four of us. My name is Jamie Newbold. I own a comic book store here in San Diego called Southern California Comics. I insisted water was on the house, so dig in. Barbara Kiesel. Okay. Barbara and I are just meeting for the first time, but she's a pro in this business, writer and editor. She's worked for the big companies. And I will give you guys a chance to talk after I introduce you. So this is Chris Ryle. Chris is a writer and head chief and bottle washer for IDW and other companies. And then
thank you. Thank you and only you.
Checks in the mail.
And where are you at right now? I've lost track.
Existentially speaking, I have no idea where I'm at right now as far as comics go.
He is not a hologram.
No, I'm not. So
you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure.
And then from this point on, bring up your subject about what's wrong with comics. We'll come back this way.
For sure. All right, so my name is TJ Shevlin. Currently, I work for Super 7 here in San Diego. I used to work for IDW Publishing for 3 years. I opened the San Diego Comic Art Gallery with Kevin Eastman, and kind of a big point of pride for myself. And outside of the publishing side of comics, I was the manager at St. Mark's Comics in New York City for 10 years. Grew up shopping there as a kid, got to work there. Just got back from New York as we recently closed down after 36 years. And so there will be a lot to talk about as far as retail and publishing goes. So, I guess.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's talk. Well, it's funny because
Start up, man.
I was just going to say, I'm not crazy about the premise of this panel. Just because it leads with the negative. Like, there's always a lot of things in comics that need fixing. There always have been, always will be. Just as there are in all of publishing, all of entertainment. So I always like the premise more of comics are good, and let's figure out what we can do to make them better. Let's figure out how we can get some of the audience back. Let's figure out how to fix some of the bad practices. Let's figure out how to make it better and focus more on that rather than what's wrong. Like, there's a lot that's right. And so I never like the negative slant to it, but, you know, I understand there's things we need to correct and sort of fix to
The
move
title
forward.
definitely has a negative connotation, and the only way you're going to fix anything is kind of working on the negative, but really focusing on the positives as well.
Well, really, like Frank Miller said in Batman and Dark Knight, there's nothing wrong with comics that we can't fix with our hands. So I think there's things we can all do to make this better and stronger and faster.
Barbara.
I think what's wrong with comics, not a whole heck of a lot. It's in a state of evolution that has a lot of people upset because what they expected to be there might not be what's there now, or what they expect to be there might not be there yet. So it's a case of it's going through a great expansion into new media, into new locations, into new forms.
Into new
and so
hands.
part of it is people are just startled by the amount of change.
As a retailer, the problems are business-like for me, but I get it from all sides. From my customers, a few are here in the audience. You want to pick the #1 spot that causes most consternation. And right now, for my customers, it is content and cover price. We get these cycles where somebody's rumor says that circulation figures are down for comic books, and then that becomes this virus that spreads around. So apparently I'm hearing this time and time again that circulation figures are down across the board. Nothing is answered up by digital comics. I don't know where they stand right now. When I ask my customers what's wrong, why aren't they buying this anymore, it can be a regional issue too. When you live in San Diego and you're spending $4 on a comic book, hopefully there's enough gratuity there to keep you occupied, get you $4 worth. It's that or gas. And probably not the same problem in other parts of the country. So that's kind of a zonal thing. So if we have a problem and it's cover price and content, I'm going to ask for a hand who wants to tell me what they feel is wrong with content from the audience. Who has an issue with content would like to speak about it? Don't be shy. Everybody's loving the content of comics. Go ahead.
I'm a member of a graphic novel book club. With the Captain Marvel movie coming out, people wanted to read a Captain Marvel collection to get ready. These are folks who are motivated to read, who want to read. They were confused as to what to get, multiple volumes, multiple numbers. When we finally chose one, it was heavy with references to previous stories that no one else had read before. So these were motivated folks and they were having a hard time finding something.
But see, doesn't that kind of speak to me it speaks to the need for comic book stores and what comic book retailers and the people that work in the stores can offer, because if you go to Barnes & Noble and you find Captain Marvel and graphic novels, or you go to Amazon and there's 20 different books and sometimes it's a male, sometimes it's a female, and you don't know where to start, your retailer can say, look, this volume written by Kelly Sue DeConnick is the thing that really inspired the movie. This is your ideal starting place. So I think it's hard when any time there's a movie made about a property that's 80 years old or whatever the age is, but having somebody who's an expert in the material curate it and say this is the thing that is going to speak to you most similarly as the movie is where we're lacking with like the online sales and the digital sales and all of that.
I have to say, Barbara,
Go ahead.
please.
Go ahead.
I do have to say then real fast, a lot of that comes to not just the retailer, but the staff that the retailer has. Having a staff that's knowledgeable, that's friendly, and more than that, kind of helping us continue to move away from the gatekeeper mentality. And anybody who loves something, all they want to do is share it. All they want to do is talk about it, and they want you to experience why that you love it as much as you do. Nobody, I would like to believe this, the very first comic I ever bought is Amazing Spider-Man 350. It was 1991, and it was a part 2 to another story, and I didn't care because it was Spider-Man, and it was Dr. Doom, and I was 10, and that was awesome. And I think part of the problem right now that we need to kind of figure out how to make it work for everybody is there's this idea of you have to start from the beginning. And I really feel like try and start from what you think looks cool. You'll pick it all up as it goes on. Soap operas have been doing, stories for 50 years, and there's always, at least mostly, I think, new viewers. I think it's just a matter of find the thing that's cool.
One of it is, okay, in terms of editorial and marketing, comics are still locked into the perpetual newsstand cycle that existed when there was a perpetual newsstand. And I think the whole industry would be behooved by switching to a story-based model, whether it's a single comic or a single graphic novel, but to have the whole complete package together. What I would have liked to have seen them done for something like Captain Marvel on a very simple level is put out a 2-page thing that could be shipped out as a double-sided flyer that says, here is the history, cite the books that you could have in stock then that people could buy if they like different parts of the history. But if you just have that little 2-page as a catch-up, then you could start anywhere and read anything.
It makes a good bag stuffer as well in a comic shop, just having a reader's
Well,
guide.
yeah, but I mean, but that's sort of an editorial fix. On Captain Marvel specifically, one of the things I found really interesting, I get a lot of new graphic novels from my library when they come in and read through everything, and then if I think it's great, I go buy it. And so I'm sort of the backwards consumer here. There's a little golden book of Captain Marvel, and on the very last, I'm spoiling it, on the very last page, a little golden book of Captain Marvel. So here's a gross editorial error as far as I'm concerned, and I don't mean to be insulting whoever's involved. Here's a book about Captain Marvel. It gives a quick history of Captain Marvel, and on the very last page, they refer to Ms. Marvel, that Ms. Marvel wanted to dress up like her hero. At no point is Ms. Marvel mentioned in this book prior, so if you're a little kid reading through this name suddenly comes out of the ether. If you're a comic geek, you know that was the previous identity, etc. So to me, that is an editorial error, because those two things shouldn't be mixed without some kind of clue at the beginning of the book, too.
I mean, at least they left binary out of
From
it.
a-
Yeah.
From a retailer point of view, the point about not knowing where to go to transfer your desire from screen to book because the books are overwhelming, this is a problem I have argued about before. It would be so much easier if Captain Marvel started volume 1 and continued all the way up to volume 15. Now you know where to start. There isn't such a thing. There are 18 Captain Marvel number 1s.
Because number 1s sell the most.
Everything is about sell, and then the cover price is the other argument. Sell and sell for higher prices. And you guys understand, because this is your dilemma, how to get the product in and still make the money you need to keep busy. I don't know if anybody out here has an issue or a solution to cover price. At the last venue we did this, there were a few odds and ends, but it was naive for the audience to believe that they could cut prices. It's not going to happen. Yes?
I have a quick question. I have two questions actually, but I got to ask one question first. So, did Marvel actually, you're saying that one-page, thing or a little a summary or something? Did Marvel like maybe put out a compilation or something of Captain Marvel so that that you guys could actually sell it or something, or just make it available? That's my first question. And the second question is, you of course realize that Marvel is like all major corporations. They don't talk to each other, and so the comic book people did not work with the marketing people on the movie, but the marketing people worked with everybody else and their brother and sister. But it didn't occur to them to work with their own comic book people to put something out.
The good side of fans becoming pros is they love the material and carry that love through into the material. The bad side of fans becoming pros is they get very insular about the material and protective of it, so they don't want to step outside and say, here's a good business decision to have an entry-level book that's a compilation for those people who aren't reading comics. It's more like, oh, if they're not reading comics, we don't want them.
Well, see, I kind of think like the question about if there's a good Captain Marvel book for the people that see the movie is a smaller problem than some of the things faced in the industry, which is there's a certain number of people that read comics every month and every year, and you debate whether it's 150,000, 250,000, whatever that audience is that regularly reads comic books. And I think the reason we don't grow beyond that is when you go to Comic-Con, you go anywhere and there's a panel with all the actors, sitting next to Chris Hemsworth should be Jason Aaron, who writes the comic, because the only way to ever make people that go see the movies, and there's millions and millions of them who aren't buying the comics, sort of think about comics in the same way and maybe want to be drawn from the movie to that, is to equate the creators behind this content with the actors that are making the movies. And so I think in a bigger scale, the companies need to be better at treating the creators behind the comics themselves alongside the actors.
Especially because those creators have made a concerted effort to have the comics feel more like the movies. And a lot of characters have taken on those personality traits, they've taken on their little tics, and to some of them have even taken on the visual feature of those actors. So it's a great way to kind of smooth you in.
One actor actually did that, Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, talk about Len Wein.
Yeah, when he walked off the stage and actually shook the guy's hand, he says, "Thank you very much for creating this, this character, etc."
You have a question over there.
It's happened before.
Yeah, actually, it has to do more with Disney acquiring pretty much everything over the past 30 years.
Yes.
And it just almost seems to me like they're ripping out what they can to make money off the movies, and the publishing side of it, they're just throwing off, just throwing off. They don't even care. And that has to do with what you were addressing with your shop, which is best one in San Diego, by the way. How they just keep relaunching like new number one this, number one that, 20 special edition covers, all that. Do the companies that are running this, the major ones anyway, do they even care about the publishing side of it?
They absolutely care, yeah, because like when you have Disney or Marvel Studios in California are making the movies, the people on the publishing side only care about the publishing. Like, it's fun to go to the premiere or see your name and the thank yous, but they got into comics for the love of making comics, and the publishers and the publishing side want the publishing to work, and they need it to work to keep everybody employed and keep doing what they do. So there is that kind of broader perception that because the movies are the bigger thing and that's the thing that's amplified to such a degree that the publishing doesn't matter, but it's really not true. Like it matters greatly to the people that are doing it. It's just, you know, we all just need to find ways to get that publishing into a wider number of people's hands.
There is a dilemma that we all have to deal with the same distributor. I don't know if everybody here is familiar with Diamond Comics, but Diamond has a say in how we do things. And some of our problems that we've complained about before from the retailer side are our inability to get things when they're supposed to be here, things straightened out. And it's impossible and it discourages a lot of people. The publishers can't do anything about it because they're locked in. They don't store the extra comics we sold out of. We have to go back to Diamond. There are issues with, I'm assuming, does the distribution ever deal bluntly with you guys about cover prices?
No.
Diamond just takes what they're given. It keeps working. And you guys, you have very little choice in order to survive. What do you have to do to cut corners and avoid another price increase?
Well, so that's a question that's kind of viewed from a lot of different angles, because I was at the comics, there's a Comics Pro event that involves a lot of retailers where we all got together a couple weeks ago and retailers aired a lot of the things that on their side that they see as problems and publishers talk about how we're trying to address them. And none of them want lower cover price. They say, look, the margins are so small anyway, I can't sell a $1.99 comic to save my store. Like I can't keep my shop open if everybody was to cut back to that degree. And so you hear from people that books are too expensive. And I mean, when you get to a $9.99 anniversary issue of a thing, you can't argue that. At the same time, I'm also told they don't want the lower prices because that just cuts into everybody's business. And so it's kind of like variant covers. Everybody says variant covers are the devil, stop doing them. By the way, we're going to order each of them. And so you get kind of a mixed message on all of these things. And so, yeah, you sort of respond to the business as the business comes to you. And so I don't know that there's a scenario where you lower prices and make the business stronger.
We get those questions, and it's best that we hear those answers from you guys, because you're the ones who bear the brunt.
You do get to a point where, like, honestly, if you want to talk about something wrong with comics, it's this, and it's $9.99 Netflix where you can watch everything all the time. And so for a $4 or $5 comic to compete with that, it's really hard. So that comic better be damn good. And I think that's part of the problem on the publishing side is we've had this tendency to think that since yes, and we're doing serialized comics, so if this month sucks, well, we'll do something cool next month, and so the point I try to make internally is like, we don't have next month. We have right now to do the best possible thing we can do to keep that audience wanting to come back. Otherwise, this grabs 20 hours of their day's attention, or Netflix and all the other channels do, and so that's kind of the bigger thing we're competing with is just attention and so much stuff.
Do we have another question from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Right, so yeah, as a former retailer myself, like I kind of wanted to dial back to the two biggest problems I see are the failure to capitalize on the fact that we have generations who were raised on animated series, on movies, and this is really a big two, and especially DC problem. Like IDW actually does a great job with their licensed properties in general, like dialing back to what's familiar. You know, bumpy road sometimes, but yeah, you guys strike usually what's familiar, what resonates with the audience, what someone who has only seen other media can be converted into a comic reader for. And that's the thing, is like the orders of magnitude of people that watch the shows and then don't read the books, like that is the growth area, like people who are already invested in these characters, converting them into readers. And so my store, Villainous Lair, like we were getting going right as New 52 came into being, which, you know, I've heard alternate explanations for what New 52 was trying to do, but it did not actually do the thing, which was resonate either with old comic readers or new folks who know these characters from other media. So absolutely, that failure to capitalize, that would be my number one. And number two, you hit on this a bit, I am now free to say that Diamond can eat my shorts. Like we've got a monopoly, there's no competition, there's no incentive to improve, you know, shipping, like as a concept, or ability to not put open highlighters in the packages. I have a great relationship with Diamond, but there's a structural systemic issue when there's only one distribution house.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is we're sort of all held hostage to really old publishing and distribution models. On the book side of the business, if we sell into the mass market, those books are 100% returnable, so they can keep them as long as they want. They can let people come in and beat the shit out of them, then they can return them, and we have to give them back 100% plus a restocking fee, so it's more than 100%. And on the retail side for the comic stores, a lot of times they're buying product where all the risk is put on them. And so somewhere in the middle, I think, is a workable financial model. And I think we've gotten better as publishers to offer more and more books that we really want to get behind on a fully returnable basis to stores. But I just think the model itself needs something to sort of further tweak it.
We've had days where there was like this really craved Wolverine issue and they would all come damaged, like literally all of them. And all of our customers would go to a different store. Like,
Yeah, this whole diamond thing has always been a mess, and there's no fix at all. There's just nothing. There were solutions. There were companies that would act as middlemen and order quantities and then replace the ones you missed. You just went straight to them and bypassed Diamond. Diamond got wind of that, let it ride for a while, convinced the publishers to lay down on this guy so Diamond didn't have to look dirty, and they shut these places off. And here we are again, unable to reorder stuff from Diamond. Yes, sir.
Most of the discussion so far is about comic book stores, which are bookstores. I think we all know the problem bookstores are having, and it's not, we used to just think it was general bookstores, but now specialty bookstores are going out of business. Samuel French just closed its bookstores, both of them in LA, the one in New York. They have one in London inside a theater. In West Hollywood, the porn bookstore went out of business in West Hollywood. Not a good indicator for bookstores.
Perhaps the prayer is in order.
So,
It was the darkest day in the history of mankind.
yeah. So, my question, I have to agree, I was cheered by what Barbara said to start, because I agree, this seems to be in evolution, and I'm not someone eager to hold on to the past, but I would like to have comics in some form or another. My question would be, is anyone new coming to a bookstore? Because I go to the comic book store once a month, and I just see guys my age and older, and an occasional woman. And if there's no future in bookstores, what's the future for comics?
Well, so it's funny, like removing the idea of where people buy this content from the conversation for just a second, I was talking to these elementary school kids not too long ago and asked the class, how many of you read comics? And some of them raised their hands, maybe 20% of the people. And then I said, well, how many of you read Raina Telgemeier's books? How many of you read Dogman? And 99% of the kids were like this. They don't think of these as comic books and graphic novels. They just think of it as a thing they like to read. And so,
Scholastic Book Fair.
yeah, I think, right. I think there's
It comes to them.
there's other ways to get those kids, if those kids aren't in the habit of going to comic shops every Wednesday, like all of us are, there's other ways that they're consuming this content. They just don't necessarily think of it as comic books, but I think that's building that audience that is then going to gravitate toward more adult material and find comic book stores and all of that. So,
They bring up a point about Scholastic.
yeah.
Diamond encourages all of us to get partnered up with libraries. So my store started doing that 15 years ago. Public schools, public libraries. And immediately we saw the fault in this, was that the libraries don't have any money. And the paymasters who work for the libraries, they pay me every 6 months. They're ordering $200 of books a month. I don't see a check until December. So that, we tried and failed. And it was the newest library over on Arrow Avenue. They actually set aside a corner for these kinds of things. You could have comic book talk. You could put comics in. So we tried to work out a purchase price. They said, nah, don't have the money. So the libraries are a struggle, and yet they're the root for this because the kids are doing it.
One of the things that we're doing in Pasadena at the art night like last night is they have local comics creators come in who can sell their books there at the library, pulling from that other audience. Can you create, or have you tried creating a situation with those libraries where you have a mini store that goes up for a day?
It becomes a time consumption issue for a man who's working a full-time job. Either he has to staff somebody who can go handle it, and that's a personality issue. You want the right staffer there. It has to be the right character, it has to be good with kids, and has to be able to make, it's just a lot of things. It sounds good, in practicality it starts to run a tank dry. Does anybody else have a question?
I had a thing on that, to piggyback specifically on the scholastic part, because I think that's something that really does need to be talked about. Anybody who's in their maybe late 30s and older can remember when Jeff Smith started doing Bone, and you can remember self-publishing is great, but then there's the sporadic shipping, is he ever going to get an issue out on time, all of these things, but then there's the other people who look at Bone and it's, oh yeah, I've read Bone, it was in my library at school, and now I read Bone because Scholastic does it, and it opened me up to all of these other things. And if we were looking at comics like that, where it's the, maybe not even so much the complete trade paperback, graphic novel, whatever you want to call it, but stuff that is made in that format specifically, consistently for the library, for the school, and if the big two or any other company were the ones leading that charge, it would change the industry for the better, at least in a small step.
By the way, all four of us talked. I don't think any of us answered your question.
No, nobody knew coming to a comic store. I mean, that was the question.
Well,
You know what? Actually,
They are, but it's, you're going back to the very first question. Captain Marvel shows up in a movie, they want more. And they're not getting it because it's not articulately offered to them. So we get new people into our store for various reasons, but you can sense a movie person because they walk in, you see their jaws slack and their eyes go like this. And then my staff, I redundantly employ so that there's always somebody there. They try to talk, and we have to go over these books, and they're all stored vertically. So we're walking around the store like this, trying to figure out which volume number 1 of which Fantastic Four title. Can you be more specific about which one you think you want? And they don't know. This goes back to the mechanics of the industry. And if we talked about the 2-page insert, you were talking about the two. If there was, other than the reservoir that comes from the internet, where you would have to find out on your own, that they're not going to. They want an impulse buy. It would be nice if there was a quick, handy reference. If we have to go to Diamond to figure it out, those idiots created a 4-window search box. They need 5 windows just to get back past Captain America. Because now I only have one more box, and Captain America heroes in all of them. So if you get what I'm saying is that Diamond hurts us a bit because their search engine is worthless. So if you guys produce something that gave us context that simply included in a monthly wrap-up or an annual wrap-up, it would make, we would just go to, that's what you want.
And we'll do catalogs and such, but we also like to drive people into stores. Like that's why IDW has really focused on kids comics the last decade or so. My Little Pony, Star Wars comics aimed at kids, Marvel comics aimed at kids, some Ninja Turtle stuff aimed at kids. So hopefully, if there's parents that go in there to buy the comics they want, they can see that there's comics that also appeal to their kids. So they either pick them up, bring them home to their kid, or want to bring their kid to the store because now there's a lot, Boom does the same. Like there's an awful lot of comics aimed at that younger audience. So we try to make the stuff, and I know that Jamie offers the stuff, and so then at a certain point the responsibility is on the parents to actually get that stuff in front of their kids in a way, and so just keep building that audience.
and I keep doing this, T-Barbara, I'm so sorry about that. No. All right, well, part of the problem too is when you think of a bookstore, most bookstores are bookstores, right? It's not, very rarely is it, this is the romance bookstore or the horror bookstore. It's a bookstore and this is where you buy books. But when you walk into a comic book store, what's the first thing that you see? Superheroes. The first thing that you see are superheroes. And at St. Mark's, I can tell you right now, we sold more Sandman than we did Watchmen or Dark Knight. As big as those two books are and were and will ever be, Sandman was always the easiest go-to. Anything of that style of comic, Fables was killer for us. And on top of that, you've also got books that are Umbrella Academy.
Lock and Key
was huge for us over there. But you know what? It's not the first thing that you see. The first thing that you see are it's Superman, it's Batman, it's Captain America, and it's Iron Man. And when you walk in and you're bombarded with that immediately, for people who are new to comics, they're going to turn on their heel and walk right out. It's an overwhelming thing, and you have to find the way to make it at least presentable.
If I'm in a large company and I had, say, a Captain Marvel movie coming out, not only would I have my 2-page codex, complete with, to you, the retailer, 2 levels. Number 1, to you, the retailer, here's everything that might support it, here's all the code numbers, boop, boop, button right here. But for your customer, here's the free intro you get in case you are interested. And I'd make sure they were both set up so that what part of it are you interested about, the movie version or the history? Do you want this kind of story, whatever? And point them to the various variants and all that. But I would be providing the stores with displays. I would be trying to get people in. I would try to figure out if there was a way to do returnable volumes of the history collection to the comic book stores. That would be part of our, massive movie R&D thing that we could then take back if they did not sell for you. I would really put a push on something like that with the idea of new readers coming into the store, because the returning readers of nostalgia comics are such a small number in terms of the business of the world that you can't sustain a store of those numbers anymore. You have to be able to be friendly to the new people coming in, which means the companies must start by serving you up with single unit pieces
But is
that
that
can go out the door.
Not to defend other publishers' practices, because I don't really know what they're doing, but did Marvel not do that with like the True Believer books that they do, the $1 comics, where they reprinted an old Miss Marvel comic, and in the back there is a full reading guide of different Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel books.
Do
So
they
I
have to
think
pay for that?
it's a $1 book, yeah. And sometimes, I know some
Okay,
shops that
sometimes
hand
one
it
is too
out with
much,
their
okay.
customers, but yeah, and again, a lot of these decisions
But
are.
I'm saying the information
Yes.
will be easily accessible to the store so that if you have an employee who's there his first day, he knows if I click on the Captain Marvel button on this, it'll give me the history and ask me some prompt questions to help you find what you want to go home with.
For a retailer point of view, they want to know what the jumping off points are. If you only have one jumping off point, I don't even need to talk to the customer. But when you have Uncanny X-Men, which is another burden through Diamond's windows, because you type in Uncanny X-Men, and then you can't type anything else, there are 55 Uncanny X-Men. And they're all numbered crazy. You want something that makes sense. You'd think that Diamond would gain an advantage if they produced this for us. We would order more from them. But they won't put a dime into anything.
But I don't think it's Diamond's responsibility. I think it's the core publisher wants you to continue reading your materials. They ought to.
We have to translate what they're looking for into an online order right there on the Diamond site. It would be easier if the two were copies, because trying to translate what you're telling me to the inefficient search engine on Diamond changes the whole set of rules again, and it retards this problem. You had a question back there?
Yeah, kind of to answering your question about new customers coming into the shop. I want to say I started at like Barnes & Noble picking up graphic novels. I'm like, okay, what's happening currently? And that's kind of what got me into going into my local comic book stores. And now I'm basically at SoCal every Wednesday picking up some stuff. Like, that was 2 years ago where it kind of branched off from the movies and my interest coming back to growing up from the 90s. Where it kind of started off with that cartoon and get my fan base and knowledge back. And what I'm noticing too though is some of the stories are kind of boring too. But then my question, do any of these big publishers or writers, like other big companies have, crap, I just had it, market research or like a panel of fan base to run by like story.
We have the internet.
You're asking if store owners and fans, readers, are included in the decision making that publishers have. That's the question. Are we? Are they?
Well, it's funny because it's like when Stan Lee always said, never give the fans what they think they want. You ask
That's
10
true.
people what they want and you'll get 15 opinions. And I mean, I found that out even at the retail side when we went to Comics Pro, is somebody will say, you do this and this does not work in my store at all. Do not ever do that again. Talk to this person and they say, you need to do more of this. This is the only thing that works. And so it's kind of like when somebody's pitching me on a story and they're trying to wonder like how much advice to take from the various people they talk to. And I always say it's kind of the 80-20 rule. So if 80% of people are telling you that this thing is bad for them, then I think it's worth listening to. But I don't think there's any way to run any business on any side if you're taking everybody's individual opinion and trying to apply it, because it's just everybody has counterintuitive needs, I think.
I want to throw in one other thought, and not meaning to dump on any retailers here, but if you have a comic book store, it is a business, and part of the business is figuring out what is your local market, what does your audience want, because none of the publishers can provide something that will work for anybody who comes into any store. Depending on where you are, you have a local population that wants something there that they won't want at a store 20 miles away. So things do have to be customized by the retailer. They have to figure out part of what the people coming in their door are and start with what they want and then branch out to introducing them to new things.
So yeah, I mean, we don't go behind glass and listen to people talk, but like when we go to these retailer summits, you get all kinds of different opinions, which are very helpful. And then at conventions, you hear from fans, well, year round. So you get a lot of consensus from all sides, and you also have sales data to tell you, like, this book is not working at all for anybody, clearly, so we shouldn't do that. And then, you know, you might dig into why and how we can fix that and do something different. So there's a lot of different data and opinions thrown our way, and they all do factor in, yes. So yes, your voice is heard.
But it comes down to entertainment too. You know, you have companies that spend billions of dollars on movies and they can't guarantee something's going to be a winner. They go by best guess, and even if you have market research, you can't guarantee what the audience response will be until you actually have ticket sales. So sometimes you can only see the trends after the fact. Certain things you know when they're coming through, they're going to be good. Other things you kind of go, why did that sell?
From a practical side, like, we have no industry without comic book retailers. You know, you can sell books through Amazon and through digital and all of that stuff, but we have an entire front line of shops where it's driven by people who love this business and are immersed in this business and can talk this business better than anybody. And so that's why, you know, when you need to know about Captain Marvel, don't go to Barnes & Noble, go to these guys, and they'll tell you exactly what you need to know and which books to start with and all of that. And so I think that's the best thing we have, is that the front line of people who really know and care about this business.
Yeah, but I think expecting them to know everything about everything.
You brought up comicsology. You brought up digital. Okay, so there is a civil war within our business. It's me versus the person who's buying from the internet. I'm selling the same product they want to read. It is a problem. There's no way to describe that. Every week I wonder how we're doing, because I wonder who disappeared because they went digital. I don't know. Sometimes I get people who come back because ultimately digital seem more faddish than the ulterior feed, which is, I want to love my comic book in my hand, stick it in a bag and board, and someday I'm going to resell it to SoCal for about 10% of its value. So, you guys, how do you, we're so far apart. You benefit from comicsology and digital comics. I suffer from this. Somebody tried to talk me into subscribing through, getting a discount, then doing digital comics. We did the math, the extra paperwork and extra staffing, killed any profit, don't do it. So I don't like digital comics. There, I've confessed my sin.
But so I
How
guess,
about you?
I think my question is, are you suffering from it? And so when
They're not paying me a dime.
well, no, but so what I mean is, when this all got started 10 years ago, whatever it was, when the first iPads and when there were first digital comics on phones, everybody said, oh, Jesus Christ, there goes the industry. We're now the music industry, everything is done. And you could see a sort of an equitable dip in print as digital got started. And then there was this point where digital didn't keep doing this. Digital did this. And it sort of plateaued. And I think most people that want to read comics that way now have the device. There, first of all, haven't been a ton of innovation since then on the different tablets. So if you want a thing and you want to read that way, you got to that point 5 years ago. And what we saw at the time was we sold a lot more books sort of directly after digital became this big thing, because what we heard from people, and I mean, a lot of it's anecdotal, of course, but we heard from people saying, there hasn't been a comic shop near me in 5 years, but now I could revisit this stuff, and now I'm going to go find a store, I'm going to go buy this trade paperback, I'm going to sample it this way, and then it's drawn me back into stores and got me back into collecting in a bigger way. And so I'm sure it's pulled some people away, but I think it's also pulled some people back.
I also think that digital's kind of helped change the trade paperback waiters, because for so long it was always, oh man, that looks great, I'll wait for the trade paperback. And then you wait and you wait and you wait, and there's no series anymore, because waiting for the trade paperback without buying single issues guarantees you're not going to get more than just that trade paperback. Now you've got these people who are reading digitally and they're going to go into the store to buy that physical media because they've gotten the content in their heart and in their mind. They're still supporting it. They may not be supporting the physical single issues, but it's enough support to them where they can go and get that trade paperback after every 6-7 months or so. So I do think a part of that too is a matter of changing, looking at the way purchasers have changed the way they purchase.
I'd like to take another question.
Do you think comic book stores are now like counterculture? They're going back towards that old, originally it was kind of counterculture-ish, and now that's what's cool again, and that's maybe what is attracting people back?
Comic book stores, they have so many genres and varieties, and so many stores are not cookie cutter. They have their own imagery. You have gaming, you have comic books, you have some t-shirts, some posters, some other things. My store is a little bit different because we're concentrating on massive amounts of trades and back issues. So people come back to the stores and we ask them why. And they always say the same thing. I missed it. We found that there's a degree, a formula. You grew up with comic books, you're a kid. You hit high school, maybe you're 18. You move on. Military, got a job, got married, had kids. Then you got a permanent job you want. You can own the house for a while. The kids are grown up and you're bored. And you miss the thing that meant something to you. These are the guys that come back. And so what we've learned is that they're coming back for reasons out of curiosity. The movies, everything, and these stores offer so many entertaining things. It's a shame when all stores can't get the same amount of attention. Maybe it's the size, the square footage limits them. Maybe it's the isolation. Maybe it's the guy who runs the store. Whatever it is, if the stores want to be a part of the fix, they have to see the big picture and try to blend into it. There's guys here on the stand, the publishers and the people who write and all this stuff, they have access to you on the internet. They see if they're on Facebook or they're on Instagram or something, and they don't get religiously bashed because people don't like the way they draw their feet or something. You can try to work these things out, contact these guys if they accept it, and try to get some information on what the hell's going on. But frankly, if the stores are on their own and they have to figure this stuff out, these guys try, I know, because Chris and TJ have come by the store many times, and we just talk about this stuff. But they can't leave the office and hit every store and work their magic and try to make my business more of a success. And then I have to say that the customers also have some responsibility. We're there to help you. So if you want this business to work, a little consistency perhaps, understanding how the stores work, figuring all this stuff out, just common sense stuff.
And I don't even see shops now as like today's head shops as much as like vinyl record stores. We're never going to appeal to millions with comic books at this point. Same way millions are going to go buy streaming music, but the people that do love it in this format, in the printed format, like I think, the comic books are essentially a luxury. You can spend $10 a month or $8 a month to get Hulu and watch whatever you want. But the people that love this content and want it in printed form are still there, and I just think we need to just keep finding ways to put good content into their hands.
Well, part of it is community and access.
Yeah.
I mean, a store can provide a local community space or connection. A store can have a pro come in because you can sign a trade paperback, but you can't sign, well, I suppose you could sign an iPad. But it would
I
be a
signed one
mess.
iPad before, it was ridiculous.
Yes, sir.
Well, the other question goes back to that recent controversy with Mr. Meyer, Bill Meyer, right? And the whole thing, when he was talking about Stan Lee, and first, there's some people who still have that idea that they're only for children or for adolescents or something. And clearly, I mean, all these issues, the things that are brought up in it, because I was around during the 60s, yes, and so, comic books really push the envelope on those major issues. And so, the perception, I think, is is working against comic books too. You know,
But do you think it is, or is it somebody like Bill Maher who's just out of touch on this kind of thing? Like, somehow Bill Maher resents that Stan Lee had a bigger, more passionate following or something, and he begrudges people that like a thing that he doesn't like, which is kind of the internet in a encapsulator right there. Like,
Be careful of anyone with an opinion who has an agenda.
If you ever get an opportunity, though, to go on that specifically too, number one, anybody who doesn't want their mind changed, they just want to argue, they're not going to get their mind changed. But if you ever get an opportunity, and this is specifically a Bill Maher thing, go on YouTube and find when all he's doing is sitting there insulting professional wrestling, and he gets 5 pro wrestlers on there telling them the merits of their profession and what they do and life on the road and all to entertain people, and he doesn't care despite the fact that they're there talking about why they're passionate about it.
Sure he cares, because what he does is press a button that's going to start controversy, that's going to get the hits.
That's the only
people
part he
coming
cares
to
about.
I got annoyed by him at first.
It's a PR stunt.
And then I realized that he's a 60-something guy who brags about smoking pot, bought into a baseball team and dates 20-year-olds, and he begrudges us to think that he finds immature. Like, that opinion doesn't matter.
We are running out of time, so somebody who has a question that hasn't been addressed here at all, somebody has a concern that now's the time.
Yeah, how do we fix comics? Go.
Real quick, this is comment. When you go in a comic book store, let's say Captain Marvel, there should be a comic book there that is that Captain Marvel. Not the Captain Marvel that your Marvel writers decide to go this way and that way. I walk in the store, and they can have those too, don't misunderstand. Walk in there, and you say, I want the movie Captain Marvel, and that should be directly tied, that a person can identify and have a complete story
they
that I
do.
purchased.
And that's what's going on.
They actually do that.
Yeah.
That's been done many times. They've tried to adapt, and they never float.
I don't mean
can't tell you why.
directed to, but related to the.
They've
It's
done
that character, not
It's
necessarily the
direct copy.
movie,
I don't think it should be
not a
adaptation,
movie
but it should be that
adaptation,
version.
no. A character that is that character in the movie.
It's been done,
That
and
exists.
they
Yeah,
don't
that's-
last.
The Guardians of the Galaxy aren't Charlie 27 and Martinex anymore. It's very much what you
Unfortunately.
right.
Even
It's
the-
what you see on screen.
The
want that
Guardians of the
young
Galaxy
dude.
that you
That's
saw on the screen is not the Guardians of the Galaxy that's in comics, because Marvel twists, adds new characters, does things.
Right, but if they.
But there
if
should
Marvel
be
were to
one that
produce-
does. The other ones are fine, but there should be one that does.
All right, we
But
have to
if
wrap
Marvel
it up.
produced a book that tracked to the movie to bring in the movie audience, then you people in the store are there to say, here are the comic book versions, here's where you might want to start, here's the.
where
I'm
the
telling
great
you,
staff comes
there's a
from.
brand new
You're not
Captain
gonna
Marvel
get
comic
what
that
you
is the
want.
movie version.
Yes.
In stores right now. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so
At SoCal Comics.
we are
Go
done,
there.
but
Thank you.
I got aced out of 15 minutes of my last panel, so I'm going to steal a couple here right now. Last words. Quick.
Last words. Community exists outside of the internet. Go into the comic shop. Free comic book day is our greatest weapon, but it's not about you guys anymore because you all read comics. It's about getting people who don't read comics to read comics. Stop taking free comic book day away from them and give it to them.
Yeah, free comic book day is a blessing. Go to your free comic book day.
And remember, they paid for those free comics, so buy stuff.
Right, Chris.
That's it in a nutshell right there.
All right, Barbara.
Share what you love, share what you think is great.
And I have just one phrase. Shoot your television, read a comic book.
Yes.